The genesis of the Proud Prophet strategic simulation. During the Cold War in 1983, at the height of Cold War tensions, when the world was living in the shadow of a possible nuclear war between the superpowers, the United States government, under the leadership of President Ronald Reagan, initiated an unusual and highly strategic project, the development of an unconventional board game called Proud Prophet. This game wasn't created for entertainment, but as a strategic simulation tool to understand and predict the possible outcomes of a large-scale nuclear conflict. The project reflected the growing fear of the catastrophe that nuclear war represented, as well as the urgent need to explore and anticipate the complex dynamics of military escalation that could emerge between the United States and the Soviet Union. Proud Prophet was not just a typical military exercise. It was a sophisticated simulation that deeply addressed the geopolitical and strategic scenario. Designed by Thomas Schelling, a renowned Harvard economist and Nobel Prize winner, the game was based on game theory, a methodology Schelling mastered and which brought him great recognition for his studies on conflict and international cooperation, especially in scenarios involving nuclear weapons. Schelling believed that game theory was the key to understanding how nations made decisions in situations of extreme risk, such as in a nuclear war, and Proud Prophet was the practical manifestation of this concept. The simulation provided a safe space to test military and political decisions in a highly tense environment. Through a realistic approach, military strategists, political leaders, and experts could manipulate critical variables such as response time, scale of attack and retaliation, de-escalation policies, and the impact of diplomatic negotiations. The goal was to visualize the consequences of each action, promoting a clearer understanding of the chains of events that nuclear escalation could trigger. In short, the simulation was a careful study of the unpredictability and chaos surrounding the use of weapons of mass destruction. Proud Prophet also helped reinforce a fundamental perception. In nuclear war, there were no winners. The simulation often ended with apocalyptic scenarios in which both sides suffered catastrophic losses. This served as a grim warning to the political and military leaders involved, leading many to reconsider the notion of victory in a nuclear conflict. Schelling's idea was to demonstrate that even the most well-crafted strategies could result in global disaster, and that diplomacy and negotiation were much more effective tools for avoiding mutual destruction. Moreover, Proud Prophet had a significant impact on U.S. defense policies. It influenced the development of strategies more focused on deterrence and the prevention of nuclear war, rather than a mindset of direct confrontation. The simulation contributed to a shift in thinking, where the use of nuclear weapons was seen as a last resort, something to be avoided at all costs, given its ability to annihilate entire civilizations. Finally, Proud Prophet's legacy lies not only in its strategic complexity, but in the crucial lesson it taught. Nuclear war was a one-way road. Through this simulation, Schelling and his colleagues were able to provide global leaders with a terrifying yet essential vision of the consequences of nuclear escalation, reinforcing the importance of diplomacy and arms control during the final years of the Cold War. The game in practice, simulating the unthinkable. For 2 exhaustive weeks, over 200 strategists, including high-ranking military officials, academics, and foreign policy analysts, gathered at the National War College in Washington, D.C. to participate in the Proud Prophet game. This venue was chosen for its strategic importance and for providing a setting that replicated the tension and seriousness of decisions made under the pressure of the doomsday clock. Participants were divided into teams, each representing the military and political leadership of the superpowers involved, primarily the United States and the Soviet Union. In each round of the game, new crisis scenarios were presented, forcing players to think of quick response strategies, negotiations, temporary alliances, and, unfortunately, in many cases, the choice of targets for nuclear strikes. According to reports from Paul Bracken, who observed and participated in the simulations, an alarming realization emerged from all the sessions. Regardless of how or by whom the war was initiated or the circumstances that led to the first missile launch, The inevitable outcome was escalation to total nuclear war. This grim forecast served as a powerful demonstration of the concept of mutually assured destruction, which was at the heart of the nuclear deterrence doctrine of the time. Hypothetical scenarios and the reality of a nuclear threat. The video describes a fictitious, yet technically possible scenario in which a small nuclear-armed nation, like North Korea, initiates a global conflict by launching an intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM. This type of missile, noted for its ability to reach almost any point on the planet in less than 30 minutes, represents a significant threat and a powerful geopolitical tool. In the proposed scenario, the launch of North Korea's Hwasong-17 missile is not merely a test, but a show of force that could be interpreted as an act of war. The choice of Pyongyang as the starting point for the launch is not random. It reflects regional tensions and the strategic importance of the location. The simulation continues with a detailed description of the missile's trajectory and the technological capabilities of American detection systems such as the SBIR's satellites. These satellites are crucial to the defense system, capable of detecting the characteristic heat of an ICBM launch and triggering a chain of military and political responses. This response is meticulously choreographed. The data collected by the satellites are quickly analyzed and sent to command centers where critical decisions are made. The scenario highlights how modern nuclear warfare is not only a matter of military capacity, but also of agility in information processing and decision-making under extreme pressure. Nuclear deterrence strategy and its limits. The narrative delves deeper into the theory of nuclear deterrence, a strategy that holds that the best defense against a nuclear attack is the ability to carry out a devastating counterattack. This principle was fundamental during the Cold War, operating under the premise that no rational country would start a nuclear conflict if it meant its own destruction. However, the presented scenario exposes a critical flaw in this strategy: the possibility of an unprovoked attack or a miscalculation that could lead to full-scale nuclear war. The simulation discusses the launch of a single ICBM by a country like North Korea, an act that could be either a test or a genuine attack, and the rapid decisions that US leaders would need to make. The complexity deepens as the video details how the United States would respond to this threat. The action plan, known as O-Plan, would involve multiple phases and decisions, from initial detection to the potential launch of a counterattack. This process includes immediate analysis and the mobilization of strategic commands to assess the situation and recommend a response to the president. The final part of the video shows how, even with all precautions and defense systems, the safety guaranteed by nuclear deterrence can fail. The decision to launch a counterattack based on partial information or a potential misunderstanding could trigger a chain response that would lead to mutually assured destruction. Global consequences of a nuclear conflict. The video concludes with a visual and narrative representation of the devastating consequences of a nuclear exchange. After the detonation of nuclear bombs, apocalyptic scenarios unfold, with immediate and long-term impacts that fundamentally alter the planet and human life. Initially, the nuclear explosions would result in millions of immediate deaths, with entire cities like Washington, D.C. being wiped off the map. The effects of radiation would spread rapidly, causing a substantial increase in mortality rates and widespread diseases. Critical infrastructures, including power grids and communication networks, would be destroyed, leading to collapses in national support systems and governance. In the long term, the environmental consequences would be equally severe. The narrative addresses the concept of nuclear winter, a phenomenon caused by the massive amount of smoke and soot released into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight and drastically reducing global temperatures. This cooling would lead to widespread agricultural failures, exacerbating food crises and triggering famine on a global scale. Furthermore, the video highlights the geopolitical changes that would follow a nuclear war. Nations less directly affected by the conflict could emerge as new regional or global powers, while the former superpowers would face challenges in rebuilding in a radically altered world. International relations would be reconfigured, with mutual trust severely compromised and possibly intensified nuclear proliferation, given the perceived need for defense against future nuclear threats. This somber ending serves to emphasize not only the physical consequences of nuclear war, but also the profound and lasting changes to the foundations of the world order. Reflection and implications for the future. The simulation ends with a critical reflection on human vulnerability and the fragile nature of nuclear deterrence strategies. The scenario explored illustrates not only the technological and military capabilities that enable nuclear war, but also the unpredictability and catastrophic potential of human decisions under extreme pressure. This in-depth examination questions the wisdom of relying solely on nuclear deterrence as a safeguard against nuclear conflicts. By demonstrating how a simple misinterpretation or a poorly calculated act of aggression could escalate into mass destruction, the video calls for the need for more robust and resilient strategies, including active diplomacy, more effective non-proliferation treaties, and a renewed commitment to reducing nuclear weapons. Furthermore, the video calls for global awareness of the consequences of nuclear war, not only among world leaders, but also among the general public. Understanding these critical issues is essential to fostering a culture of peace and conflict prevention, where nuclear war is seen not as an extension of politics, but as an absolute anathema. Finally, the narrative leaves viewers with provocative questions about the future of humanity and the legacy we want to leave for future generations. Confronting the viewer with the reality that the world as we know it could end in just an hour, the video underscores the urgency of concrete actions to prevent a future defined by nuclear destruction. The discussion ends by inviting the audience to reflect on the reality presented and actively participate in the search for solutions that ensure a safe and peaceful future for all. If you enjoyed this content, subscribe to the channel.